There's a lot going on in the area of election integrity. Judicial Watch has sent a warning shot or fired several warning shots across the bows of 5 big states about their dirty voting rolls. Tell us about that.
Well, we fired a warning shot again. We did this in 2017 and we're doing it this year. Every 2 years, the federal government issues a report based on data from the states and the counties about their voter rolls. And we can look at that report and we hire experts to analyze it and massage it and to tell us who has more registrations than citizens over the age of 18 who even could register. And we send them letters and we tell them they're not properly removing people from their voter rolls.
So let's be clear. So if they've got, let's say, 100 people in the county,
Yeah.
the concern is that the registration rolls are saying, well, you've got 110 people registered to vote.
Yeah.
That's what's happening largely?
Well, that's right. And if you're San Diego and you have, a couple of million people, it's telling you that you have 117% registered to vote. That's people who are over the age of 18 who lawfully could register. And it's an obvious indication that something's wrong.
So these in San Diego County, that means how many extra people are on the rolls that probably shouldn't be there?
About 800,000 people are on their inactive list, and those people are being processed. It's hard to say who really shouldn't be there, but it's going to be most of them.
So we focused on 5 big states, at least initially. We had California, Virginia,
Colorado,
North Carolina, and
California.
And California, and Pennsylvania. That was the
okay.
Pennsylvania. So these are not small numbers we're talking about. We're not talking about a small county in East Texas that has 10,000 people on the rolls. These are we're talking 7 figures.
We are. Now there are 380 counties in the United States that have more registered voters than citizens over the age of 18. If we could, we'd write letters to all of them.
Wow.
And there's some, federal government, help us out. I mean, the Justice Department enforces this statute, or should be.
Well, citizens can also ask their counties, under the law, give us documents talking about your efforts to clean up the rolls.
That's correct, and we do that too.
Yeah.
We do that too. But these are, as you say, very large counties, 400,000 to up to 3 million people in these counties.
So nationally speaking, last time we checked, we found 3.5 million extra names nationally.
Inactives over 100%, yeah.
So at least 3.5 million. So that may be actually on the low side of the final number of names that should be removed that aren't.
That's correct. We didn't have data for everyone, so
Right.
That's correct.
So what's the latest figure based on the most recent data?
Well, now it's 2.5 million over 100% registration.
So in 2017. We had, we were talking about firing warning shots. We do more than fire warning shots. We
sue people.
We file lawsuits.
Yeah, we do.
And so that resulted in a big settlement, at least in California, which still has problems. But the settlement with Los Angeles County and Secretary of State of California described that the results there.
Well, what we discovered, and this applies, by the way, to all the people we're writing to a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
11 counties in California. California is its own special case because in the late 90s, they were instructed by Janet Reno's Justice Department to stop removing people in a way that I think plainly violates federal law. But they dutifully stopped 20 years ago removing people. And we discovered this in Los Angeles County, where they had 1.5 million inactive registrants on the voter rolls. And we're discovering this in other California counties. And, we're talking big numbers of registrants who probably have moved to another state. 800,000 in San Diego. A couple other California counties, we're talking 450,000, 300,000. I mean, these are a lot of people.
But in California, Los Angeles County's begun the process of removing up to, the last number I checked was 1.6, almost 1.6 million.
That's correct. And they've started that process. They've mailed to these people. And under the federal law, you track their responses or their lack of responses. You wait a statutory period, and then they can be removed.
Well, and we'll get into the legal issues as to why it's illegal. But why is it important that voting rolls be clean? Because the other side will say, well, these are just names that are there, and it doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, they're inactive necessarily, and it just means that there are names that should be culled that haven't been, but it doesn't mean that there's voter fraud associated with it. Why do we need clean voting rolls?
Well, I can tell you why, but before I do that, it is federal law.
Well, okay, beyond the legality.
Well,
of it.
but for me, that's hard for me to just walk past that and ignore it, because
I hear you.
the National Voter Registration Act is the federal law that specifies you have to remove people who may have moved to other states. Okay, and that was a compromise bill. It's also known as the motor voter bill because everyone knows about the motor voter part. You register at the Department of Motor Vehicles, so more people will register, but you take extra care to make sure that the people who are on the rolls really live in the state, are dead, are eligible to vote, okay? And there's a problem with enforcing only one half of a compromise bill. It's dishonest. It's not what Congress intended. Now, the reasons why they specified that people have to be removed, consider that in Los Angeles County, 20% of the voter rolls were inactive registrants. These are people who had probably moved elsewhere.
Or died.
Yes, deaths are handled slightly differently, but yes, we found a lot of deceased registrants on the inactive list. But I mean, what you have to understand is that under federal law, they're still entitled, if they show up to the polls, to vote, to just affirm that they are who they say they are and vote. So the biggest problem you want to avoid is people showing up in the names of people who've left the state and casting their vote.
Or requesting more easily, I think more likely, requesting absentee ballots.
I think that could happen.
I mean, that would be the best way, it seems to me. I don't want to tell the clerks how to work, but they're already doing it, I suspect, which is to request absentee ballots in the names of people you know aren't around and just voting in their name.
That is a way to sort of double down on the fraud.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, in Los Angeles County, 20% of the voter rolls were people who'd probably moved elsewhere. And the people we're writing to in the last couple of weeks, numbers are up to 25%, 30% in one case. A third of the voter rolls.
So these are big. These are big.
registrants.
You know, in Virginia, it's Fairfax County, which those of you who aren't from D.C., it's the biggest county in Virginia, I think. Mecklenburg County in North Carolina.
A million people.
A million people, which is probably one of the biggest counties in North Carolina. Pennsylvania, big counties there. I think it's
Allegheny County,
and
that's
Bucks County.
1-point-something million.
San Diego. Now the good news is, ironically, even though San Diego has 800,000, after the settlement with Judicial Watch by LA County, and the Secretary of State of California, as part of that settlement, told other counties, hey, look, you know, the law is the law here, and I don't know
Secretary of State agreed to do that.
Right, and San Diego removed 500,000 names.
Yeah,
or it began the process, or they've removed them all together.
I see removed. Now, after 2017, they had 1.3 million inactive registrants and 1.6 million active voters, if I recall correctly. Now the 1.3 is down to 800,000. It's heading in the right direction.
But it's still too many.
It is still the largest number of inactive registrants of any county in the country.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.